Hey readers, it's Mr. Marshall at Stony Lane again. We were working on thinking our way through biography, and I'm working on my biography of Eleanor Roosevelt. Right? When you read a biography, it's kind of like a chapter book in certain ways. One way it's like a chapter book is that you want to keep thinking your way through with a theory, right? With an idea that you're kind of thinking about all the way through your book. And sometimes that theory changes. But when you get to the middle of the book, you kind of have to know what your theory is. You have to kind of know what you're thinking about. You're not just like kind of going, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder what's going to happen next. Because you really want to like have your mind be active the whole time. So one way that you can do that is you can make boxes and bullets about your biography, and then think about that as you keep going. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so as I'm reading about Eleanor Roosevelt, right, she was the first lady. One thing I've been thinking about is like some terrible things happened to her and around her. And so one thing is that her husband, Franklin Roosevelt, got sick in 1921. He had a disease called polio, and that left him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. He was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life after that. And so let me quickly just make a note of that, right? So FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was in a wheelchair, and she helped him a lot. She helped him to live his life, and she helped him to do his job, right? And then later on, some other terrible things happened, right? Because there was World War II, and there was the Great Depression. So in the Great Depression, she helped people who were hungry and people who were poor. Like it would have been easier for her to just sit in the White House and just kind of do nothing, but she went out and she helped the poor. So I'm going to put Eleanor Roosevelt helped the poor, right? See, I'm getting some bullets that are kind of big in this story, right? And then what else did she do? She helped people, like she went out into the war and she visited um, soldiers who got hurt. And she visited their families to bring them some peace, right? And some love. And so Eleanor Roosevelt helped soldiers and their families. Okay, so I've made that a bullet. So I'm going to try and think, well, what do these three things kind of tell us about Eleanor Roosevelt? So let's see. Her husband was in a wheelchair and she helped him. She helped the poor and she helped soldiers and their families. So what does that make me think about her? I'm going to put a box up here that says Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt. These were hard things to do. Like I said, it would be easier to just sit in the White House and, do nothing. But she chose to be brave, right? She chose to be brave. She chose to be brave with her husband and his illness. She chose to be brave, with all these people that needed her, was brave and helped those around her. I'll put that in a big box. So I say Eleanor Roosevelt was brave and helped those around her. She did that with her husband when he was in a wheelchair. She did that with the poor. She did that with the soldiers and their families. Right? Like, I think that's pretty true about Eleanor Roosevelt. It keeps happening. It keeps happening in this book. It keeps happening in her life. So now that I know this about her, I'm going to have a plan. Ready for my plan? As I keep reading, my plan is to keep thinking about this and seeing if it stays true or if it changes. But that's what I'm thinking about. I'm not just going to be thinking about I wonder what's going to happen next. I'm going to be thinking about that. So let's see. Let's read the next page. It says, on April 12th, 1945, President Franklin Roosevelt died. The whole country mourned with Eleanor. Eleanor moved out of the White House. She was no longer the First Lady, but she did not retire from public life. Life was meant to be lived, she said. Wow, so even though she wasn't the First Lady anymore, and even though she didn't live in the White House anymore, she still went out and helped people. That's brave, right? The war ended a few months later, and Eleanor Roosevelt worked to ensure peace. She was the United States representative to the new United Nations, where leaders from all over the world could meet and discuss their differences. Eleanor said, "If we are to live together, we have to talk." While Eleanor was at the United Nations, she was the chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights. Eleanor was always busy. "You must do the thing you think you cannot do," she said. Wow. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. That's brave, right? So let's add that. Eleanor Roosevelt, even though she wasn't the First Lady anymore, worked at the UN, right? She was the US representative. That's a big job, right? And she said, "You must do the thing." I'm going to write that down because that's a great quote. "You must do the thing you think you cannot do." Wow, that's brave. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm keeping reading and I'm thinking about my idea. And I'm seeing if my idea stays true, or maybe my idea will change a little, or maybe it'll change a lot. But that's what I'm thinking about as I continue reading. So that's something you can do. That's something you should do, because reading a biography is a lot like reading a chapter book. You've got to keep your mind thinking about something that is going to be a thought throughout the whole book. Okay? Why don't you try that, and I'll see you next time.